All right, we are officially recording. So Tom, go ahead whenever you're ready, and I'll let you take it away. You're muted right now, Tom.
Sorry, thank you for being here, Women in Leadership, and thank you for coming to the GLATA CECAT Leadership Series. Really excited about these topics, and just to discuss and to hear the experiences and what women leadership is and how that started, and all the future opportunities, not only in D4 but in the upcoming D11. I think it's a really exciting time. So Katie, Lisa, Lauren, thank you very much for coming. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to some fun things, and then we can get into what women in leadership is, how it started, and just your experiences and how you became started in the profession of giving back at the state or district level.
Okay, I'll start because I think I'm the oldest one here. Maybe, yeah. And don't let me go on too long because I could. So I am living here in the Twin Cities, although I was the professional undergraduate athletic training program director at Indiana at IU. And also an athletic trainer early on in my career, and I then moved to just full-time academics. But I'm living here in the Twin Cities. I'm originally from Fargo, North Dakota, and probably most of you are too young to have maybe seen the movie Fargo, but I grew up with all the good Norwegian people there, so I can mimic their accent pretty well. I retired here and retired my credentials, but retiring your credentials means that you can still participate in committees on the state, district, or national level. And I don't think you used to be able to do that, but they've left that open at this particular point. I am playing a lot of tennis poorly, but I also started a program here called Rock Steady Boxing, which is, what's your name? You. Anyway, it's out of Indianapolis, and it's a program for people. It's a boxing program for people with Parkinson's disease. And I went into this thinking head injuries because that's what athletic trainers do. I had no idea the cognitive component behind boxing and how much you need to do. And that's probably another story, but in many ways, there's a lot of similarities. There's the one-on-one relationships, which I loved, and the medical component to it. And so it has been a great program here. So that's my story.
Are we doing this by age?
I think we are.
Oh, darn it. Okay, that means I'm going second. The only rock steady that I do is probably to the music, and that's not a very good thing either. So good for you, Katie. I'm Lorin Cartwright, and I am the former head athletic trainer at Pioneer High School in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And if anybody knows Ann Arbor, it is the school that is kitty corner right across the street from the University of Michigan, which had its big graduation day today. Yay! I also taught 3 years at Michigan in their athletic training program, and I also taught 3 years at Eastern Michigan. After 15 years of athletic training, I delved into becoming an athletic director, and I never left athletic training other than the actual work in the athletic training facility. I've authored or co-authored 10 textbooks, a number of articles, and I've had numerous opportunities to be a part of leadership teams and presentations and things along those lines. So I have a variety of different background experiences, I guess you could say. Lisa?
I am Lisa Kletcherowski. I am in the state of Ohio. Columbus, Ohio is where I live. And currently I'm the service line administrator for both the sports medicine department at Nationwide Children's Hospital and also developmental behavioral pediatrics. So I oversee 2 departments now. Prior to coming to Nationwide Children's, which actually, I've been at Nationwide Children's for 20 years. I joined Nationwide Children's to start the sports medicine department 20 years ago, and we've grown pretty incredibly. We've grown to the point where we have 9 primary care sports medicine docs, soon to be 10. We have over 50 athletic trainers, and we work out of 9 sites and have a pretty big presence in Columbus. And that's been a lot of fun to do. I never thought I would ever work in a hospital. I can tell you that much. When I was in undergrad, I just knew I was going to work in the collegiate setting. I was confident of that, and I would never work in the high school setting. And where did I land? Right out of college, but I landed prior to Nationwide Children's. I worked in the high school setting for 13 years, and loved it, loved every minute of it. Worked in the Columbus City schools for about 12 of those years, and really felt like I could make an impact. But opportunity came up at Nationwide Children's, and I always like a good challenge, so I applied for the job and I got that, and it's been quite a great experience for me. And one of the neatest things that I've gotten to experience is I didn't realize how much I enjoyed helping other people develop and grow as leaders themselves. So I've found more recently, probably in the last, I suppose 7 or 8 years, I've invested a lot in my people to help them grow as leaders within our organization, and been one of the more satisfying things that I've done in my career.
Awesome. Okay, so as Tom mentioned, let's talk a little bit about let's start off with what Women in Leadership Committee is. Talk a little bit about how it started, when it started, as well as your individual experiences within the committee itself.
Well, I'll start because I was the one that actually put it in. It's actually not a committee. We're not a committee or a task force. We're at this point, program. So it's kind of a continuation of when I formed the Women in Athletic Training Committee back in 1990. I guess 5 was when it officially started. I was, over the years, just watching to see that it seemed like on the state, but more on the district level, I wasn't seeing a lot of women, at least up on the dais, the president, the vice president, all those kinds of things. And I noticed Jessica Rager's on here too. So she was up there, but wasn't seeing that a lot. And I think that if you're sitting in an audience, no matter who you are, you need to see the possibilities when you look up. And I wasn't seeing that. And so I was contacting in Indiana, our state reps, and I'm saying, gee, I'd like to see more women involved in leadership and on the district level. And so what I finally did in 2000, I think it was 18, I put a proposal together that I sent to the GLATA leadership. And I just suggested that we start a program called Women in Leadership. And they accepted it and said, okay, we're going to give you this amount of money. And so we started it. And that first time we met was at GLATA in 2019, if I've got it correctly. And what happened is that we all met right before what's called not the president's breakfast, but the president's reception, where they have all of the different leaders across the district. So we all met, and then we all went inside to this meeting, and with the hope that women would be able to move around, introduce themselves, talk to themselves. Now, this group was formed, I put together, because of the 6 states, I put together, the goal was to have 2 people from each state who would be mentors, and 2 people from each state who would be mentees. And the mentors would be people who had been involved, hopefully on the district and national level. The mentees may have been involved on the state level, but I contacted the leadership in each state and asked them to give me a couple of names of people. And I contacted the individuals and asked them if they would like to be a part of this program. A couple people, it wasn't really the time for them, so that was fine. And so formed this group, and that's the group that met. So we met, and we actually met there. And to be honest with you, we're, like I said, we're a program. We don't really have an agenda, but we have met. Well, last year, was a problem. We met at GLATA briefly, and then GLATA shut down. I think this was over a year ago. And we talked about kind of what we wanted to do, and it still isn't really clear, except that I think what's important, a couple important things. When you're talking about mentors and mentees, that's how we differentiate it. But I think that we're all mentors or mentees at some point in our life. So just because I'm older does not mean that I don't serve as a mentee at some point, and vice versa. So I think every mentor was assigned a mentee, but and vice versa. And they were each sent their resume so they could get to know that individual, and encouraged to have some kind of contact with them over the course of the year. And if different leadership positions came up, contact them and see if they were interested in doing that. So it's been kind of a loose kind of a formation, but I think we're now at the point where, in fact, we have a meeting coming up in probably 2 weeks where we're all going to get together and have a further discussion about, okay, where do we want to go from here? And part of that is because a couple of weeks ago, and you guys can remind me where that was, Thomas and Jenna, we met with you, and we met with diversity and inclusion, and talked about kind of the needs that people had. And that's how this whole conversation came up, that maybe the women who were on this particular group could come and talk. So I've decided at that point, it's time for us to get together and say, what is it that we want to be? Like I said, we're not a committee, we're not a task force. There are some talks about what the possibilities could be. There's different groups of people with different interests, but that is still to be determined. So it's more of a support and encouragement group, but doesn't have to be. So I know that doesn't give you a lot, but I guess one of my messages out of one of this whole thing is that my mantra is kind of the power of one. So I really feel like one person can make a difference. That if you have an idea for something, do not be afraid to contact, whether it's your district director, state president, and say, this is what I propose. And I mean, you've got to be willing to stand up for it, but you can make a big difference and maybe start a different program. So that's how it started and kind of where we are right now. So I don't know, Lorin and Lisa, what your thoughts are at this point.
Well, my thoughts are your thoughts, because you're the one that started this group. And, it's been a couple of years since we started, and it's kind of, I don't want to say stalled out, but it's slowed down because of the pandemic. But when Katie called me, she said, I'm the first one that said yes. So I was really happy about that. But the other thing that people should know about this program that Katie started was, I think it was also the impetus, if you will, and Ryan Wilkinson nominated her to be receive the award for the Gail Weldon Women in Leadership Award, which she got. And so, we have a very special person in our program, in Katie, and she always puts her thinking cap on and says, what do we need to do next, and how can we promote people and build people up? And I think that's really critically important when, as a student, you need to be the next person in line that helps the person next to you, beside you. You just don't even know where that's going to be. Another example of that is, I had a high school student, and one day he contacted me and said, I have requested that the governor nominate you to be on the Women's Sport Leadership Task Force. So you're going to hear from her. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm on the governor's task force. And it was a student of mine who is, you know, he's 35 years younger than I am. I don't know who is going to be the person that helps me. So we have to be very considerate. And not only do we have to be mentors, we can learn from our mentees, and they can help us move our career just as much as we can help them move their career. So just as a remembrance, don't forget your network. Your network is the individuals on this call, as well as anybody that you're working with. And that outreach is very strong. Lisa?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, you know, as athletic trainers, I think we're so fortunate, and I'm not sure we always know that, how fortunate we are to have such a tight-knit group of people who are willing to help one another out, who are willing to give so that others can learn. We're willing to help lift other people up when they need it. And I will tell you that, you know, I think I could see the Women in Leadership group, to me, is that type of group of people who, you know, we've got people of varying experience involved, varying places in our lives or in our careers. And, you know, and I think that the neat thing about athletic trainers is just the willingness to lend a hand, or to, you know, give some support, whatever that is, to other people. And I can tell you, you know, I mean, I think part of this is for us to talk about our, you know, the paths that we have taken in athletic training, and in giving back and volunteering and being involved in those sorts of things. And I think anybody who's ever traveled down that road, it's been a similar story. I'd be willing to bet that all of our stories have some sort of a common thread, and it's that somebody reached out to us. And I guess maybe I'll start with my story. You know, I told you I was a secondary school athletic trainer for a number of years, and so to me, at some point in my career, I was relatively young back then, and when I decided I want to be on the high school committee. We weren't called secondary schools committee back then. It was the high school committee in Ohio. And I got involved with that group, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the work that we did. Had a great leader at the time, in Sandy Bricker from Ohio, and really enjoyed just working with that group of people and learning from them. From there, I didn't really have any kind of goals, or, you know, wasn't looking for anything else until a very good friend of mine reached out to me and said, "Hey, Lisa, what do you think about taking over as the state meeting planner in Ohio?" And I looked at him and I was like, "Are you crazy? Like." Like, why? I'm not sure why we're having this conversation, but I you know, I was very polite. I thanked him. I said, "Thank you very much. I appreciate it. But no, I'm good. I'm involved with the high school committee, you know." So he's one of these people that he just kept asking me the question. So he wouldn't go away. So I said, "All right." He said, I think you should talk to these couple of people. So I did. And next thing you know, I became the state meeting planner, and I did that for 5 years in Ohio, and got to meet so many people in our state, and really loved doing that, playing that role as our state meeting planner. You know, from there, I decided to run for whatever reason, I decided to run for an office in Ohio, and I was elected as our external vice president at the time. And part of that role was also to be the Ohio rep to the GLATA board. And when I got, and there my circle became even bigger. Now now I got to meet people like Katie, Katie, I think you could have been president at the time. I can't remember. When I was on the board for GLATA, and boy, did I love every minute of that, and met so many more new and people who were so giving and just wanted to make a difference in the profession. And I did that for a few years, and then the opportunity came about somehow for me to become involved at the national level on the Council on Employment. And I served on that, and now my circle got even bigger, and what I found was, every role I've ever served in, whether it was at the state, at the district, or at the national level, it was an opportunity to try to give back, which I love, to try to help make a difference. But it was, the thing I got out of that, out of every role, was that I met some of the neatest people who are still great friends and built such a strong network. I stayed involved at the national level for many, many years in different capacities, and my final role really was I was the chair of COPA. As that committee formed, I was the chair of that committee for a few years. And from that point, I've been just sort of, I stepped back and I've allowed others to kind of pick it up where I left off. And, but I will tell you that, I think all of us, I don't know that I would have charted the path that I went down, but it became, just such a great experience, a great opportunity to help make a difference in our profession, and meet a lot of really great people along the way.
Awesome. I have one question, and then I'm going to see if Tom has any after this one, because I know he's a man of many questions. So, Katie, I know that you mentioned earlier that initially you asked state representatives for, 2 to 4 people that might be interested in this group. Today, is there a way for individuals to join the Women in Leadership group, whether it's through you contacting state reps or saying, hey, I'd like to be a part of the organization, or how would someone go about joining?
That's a great question. And actually, that is one of the primary purposes of our Zoom call in 2 weeks, to actually talk about where do we want to go from here? What do people feel like we need to do to expand? Because, one of the things I've noticed, and I noticed that Andrea Kowalski is on here, and Andrea can speak, but I think Andrea was one of our mentees at the time. Andrea, are you on? Anyway, but now she's involved at the district level. So there she is, her name.
Yeah, sorry. Hi, everyone.
Were you one of our mentees, original mentees?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And now you're involved at the district level, right? And I think what we have is we've got now these, what we called our mentees. A lot of them are very actively involved at the state and or district level. And so I think that has expanded. So I see as one of our primary goals to try and figure out, where do we want to go? How do we want to expand that? How do we want to get more people involved? Because I agree with you. I think that people need to see the possibilities, because if I can just comment a couple of things, one, which is, and I think Lisa, you talked about it, is that people are always nervous about being on a committee because they don't know if they can do it, what will they do. But in athletic training, that committee or group is a group of people who will help you. Mm-hmm. And you're never, ever in there by yourself. You could stand up and say, hey, I'm now the president and I don't know where to start. And people on that group will tell you, these are the thoughts, so there is a lot of help. Andrea, would you say that you've experienced that from what you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the easiest examples of that is that when I joined Women in Leadership, I was paired with a mentor, Jennifer Pop, who's the current GLATA secretary. And I think pretty soon after I joined Women in Leadership, or probably around the same time, I took on the position of GLATA archivist for the History and Archives Commission. And the person on the board that I report to is Jennifer Pop. So we have this kind of formal relationship of I'm a committee chair and I report to her, but also a very informal relationship of I could just text her and say, hey, I'm thinking about this thing. What do you think about if I go for this position? Or, hey, what do you think I should do with this? You know, I could use some advice here. So, yeah, we have a very, like a structured relationship and then a very informal, I appreciate that, you know, mentorship that I can just shoot her a text or call her really quick if I have a question.
Yeah, and that's the way that it should run. And I might also say, I think it's important to pick up the phone, and I think, Andrew, you might agree, and I think I did this with everybody. If you are interested in having somebody serve on a committee or a task force, whatever it is, I think it's important to pick up the phone and talk to that person. I think that when I got moved back into the district after graduate school, Rick Shaw called me one day, and some of you know Rick, and Rick Shaw called me one day and asked me if I wanted to serve on a committee at the state level. And I thought, oh, golly, I don't know if I should, if I could, I don't know anything. And he basically, as you with Lisa, he bugged me about it for a while, you know. He stayed on me until I said, okay, I'll do it. And so I think those phone calls are so important, and you can follow up with emails, but I really think that first contact has got to be a phone call, and I think that makes a big difference. But so I didn't mean to pull you in, Andrea, but
yeah, Katie, I believe that the phone call or a direct conversation with people is exactly the way to go. When I was being brought into the leadership piece, Doug Woods, who was my mentor at Grand Valley, said to me, you know, we are in a profession that we love. If you want this profession to have longevity to it, you have to give back to the profession that you love. So I need for you to volunteer. I said, okay, what do you got? And he introduced me to the president in Michigan, and I became the director of education. And I was like 24 years old. And I'm like Lisa, what am I supposed to do with this? And so, you know, for 4 years, I was the director of education in Michigan and was able to do that. I also, you know, Rich Ray dragged me around, and I was reminded of this by my students that I gave a presentation to this week for Manchester University. And the question was asked, how did I get involved in textbook writing? And Rich Ray and I were going through the exhibit hall, and he had to drop off some chapters at Human Kinetics. And while I was in there, the acquisitions editor said, Lorin, if you had to write a book, what would you write it about? I said, I'm not interested in writing textbooks. No, thank you. And here I am now. You know, I wrote a bestseller in athletic training, you know, I'm 10 books into this, and, you know, it never would have happened if Rich hadn't taken me there and encouraged me once he started asking questions. So it's as simple as that. Your network and the people around you can take you to the next level, and they see things in you that you may not see. So I encourage everybody to just take a look and who can you lift up and
that's right.
And who can lift you up. You just don't know who that is necessarily. And sometimes saying the word yes and going off that cliff, it leads to wonderful things and great places. And, you know, it's wonderful. And you don't do it for the accolades or the awards or the honors. You do it because you love the profession of athletic training. Right. And I love the profession of athletic training.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel this is sort of, this isn't about volunteerism, but this is kind of a neat story. It was a neat time in my career. So I was at Nationwide Children's for about I think 5 years or so. And we were at a point at that point where we had a lot of success, but we weren't any big, giant program or anything of that nature. But we were doing a lot of good work. But I had some big ideas, but I was a little afraid to, what if I screw something up? What if I try to pursue something, and what if it turns out to be a flop? So these ideas were about how to take our program to the next level. And so I had some ideas, but I just didn't have quite the confidence to really pursue those. And I'll never forget, I was at the GLATA meeting, and I'm kind of walking around, and I made the decision at that meeting at that time to walk up to this lady that some of you may know. Her name was Marge Album. And I went up to Marge, and I introduced myself to her, and I said, Marge, here's what I do. Here's where I'm working. I have these ideas. I want to take us to the next level. I want to blow this thing up, but I'm not sure about it, if I'm on the right path. And I just wondered if you would have some time at any point during the meeting that we could talk for a little bit. And Marge looked at me and she said, well, what are you doing now? How about now? And we went and we got a cup of coffee. And that was the first I'd ever met Marge. And we had a cup of coffee, and I shared my ideas with her. And she shared her experiences with me at the time, and some of the things that she had done in Indiana. And in just having that conversation, there were several key things that she said to me that just helped me to give me that confidence. But when I talked earlier about how fortunate we are in our profession to have people who are so willing to, give us a hand when we need it, or support us or whatever. I didn't know Marge from the next person, but she and I had an hour-long conversation on the spur of the moment that gave me the confidence to pursue what I wanted to pursue at my place. And what a neat opportunity that was. So I don't know, I hear Katie and I hear Lorin talk about reaching out to others, and and having that conversation, and if you want to be involved, there isn't a leader within any of our organizations that you couldn't just walk up to and talk to them and have a conversation about what your aspirations are.
I'd like to make one other comment if I can. I know we wanted to move on to Thomas, but kind of along that same line of going out, I think it's also important to kind of look inside yourself. And I actually didn't. It took me a long time to get to this point, so it wasn't something that I was aware of until, just a few years ago. I think you need to understand a little bit about yourself, and I'll give you an example. I'll try to be quick. When I formed the Women in Athletic Training Committee in the late 90s, I remember as chair of that committee, and I don't know what we were discussing, but I remember we had a member of the committee, and I don't know if any of you remember Jenny Stone. She was out in District maybe 8. Anyway, we were having a discussion, and I proposed, or I talked about something, and Jenny Stone right away got to the answer. Now, for me, in order to get to the answer to a problem, I have to go through B, C, D, D. I have to go through all of the things, and I have to settle it, and I'll come to the same conclusion. But some people on the committee can say, that's the problem, this is the solution. And at first I thought, boy, well, I don't know if I like her very much but what I became to understand is that any committee is formed of different people with different skills.
Mhm.
And we needed somebody like Jenny Stone to say, this is the issue, this is the solution.
Mhm.
For me, again, I'm just that personality type that needs to go through and think about all the issues before I get there. So I think, number one, I think you just need to understand kind of how you think, and it's okay, because you don't want to have everybody with the same personality type on a committee, right? You just have to have different viewpoints. The other thing that I came to realize over time is that I'm an ideas person. I'm not necessarily the best at figuring out all the steps we need to take. And that goes along with it. And so I would always beat myself and say, gee, I should know how to do that. I should know the answer. But you know what? There are other people who are really good after they get the issue at problem solving. So, you know, I think understanding yourself a little bit and how you function and work as a leader is also valuable.
Well, I don't really have too many questions, but the main question I was going to ask, Nick already stole it, and it was if someone came across this being a student or an early career athletic trainer, or they have 10, 15, 20 years and they're curious on getting involved with women in leadership, how would that go? So Nick stole that one from me, so congratulations, Nick. Secondly, with all the opportunities from the state to the district, the national, with GLATA going from GLATA to D4, and D11, how representation absolutely matters. So how can we get these students, these early career, or even these career advancement ATs involved at these various positions, even if it's first time part of a committee or being a committee coordinator, committee chair? Just how do we go about getting that involvement up so that representation is there and you're not just seeing one type of person over and over and over again?
Right. You know, one of my thoughts as you're talking about that is, and this would be something that our Women in Leadership Committee could probably discuss, which is how can we form a better relationship with early career athletic trainers so that we can form that, because you're right. It's that first step, which is, okay, I want to get involved. What do I do? Lisa gave a great example of saying, you know, finding something and contacting somebody. At Marge Albaum, who some of you may or may not know, but she was our NATA president. And she took the time, and there are so many people that are willing to do that. But I know it's a scary thing to do at first, to actually take that step. And so that's probably something that our leadership group can probably work on a little bit, and maybe work a little bit with the early career athletic trainers to see how we can assist, or, you know, what best we can do. Do you have any ideas, Lorin? Or
well, I think we have to be very intentional about what we do.
Yeah.
And I also work on the GLATA Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and we're very intentional about putting forth names of individuals that we believe have the potential to be in leadership, and we would like to put forward those names. And every time there's a leadership opening, you know, we need to ask people, even if they're young people. I mean, Lisa and I are both, you know, chair of the education committee, and we don't know the first thing about it. There's people on this sitting over here in the chat room as participants that have every skill set they need to be the chair of the education committee. And you think maybe I can't do that? Well, yes, you can. And so it's just a matter of us being very intentional to get people involved. I also noticed that Scott Lawrence is on this call, which I'm very glad to see, because he runs the leadership component for a committee in the NATA. And so I know that he's looking to answer that same question some way, shape, or form. So, you know, Scott, if you're out there and you want to chime in, but, you know, I think we have to be extremely intentional, and every time an opening comes up, there should be a woman's name on the ballot, or there should be somebody presented that is a woman, even a minority woman. It doesn't matter, just as long as we keep building and building and building. And, you know, there's a saying about if you can see it, you can be it. We've done a very good job, at least the three of us, of trying to be the person that people see. And so we just need to keep being very forceful and, you know, promoting people that we know have the skill set. And, you know, we learned on the fly. It's not like you have to have the total skill set. We can have that skill set built, and it will make you a better leader, and it will give you the stepping stone to the very next leader position that you will get.
Nick and Jenna, is there anything you'd like to add, or would you like to open up to the floor for questions? If anybody in the chat has questions?
Yep. I was actually about to say, if anyone that's watching right now has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. If you'd like to turn the camera on, that's okay too. If not, that's fine. And then if you have one question that's directed for anyone specific, just make sure you clarify that.
So I know that there are a few of us educators on here, and I was just wondering, like, as a young professional kind of myself, trying to educate upcoming young professionals, what are some advice you can, I guess, give us to help promote women in leadership to these students? Because a lot of them kind of all have that imposter syndrome a little bit of, oh, I don't know enough, I'm not quite like there. So how do we help teach those students that, you know, that's not a thing or has to overcome it?
You know, we can use the baseball analogy. If you don't swing the bat, you can't hit the home run. And that's what I would encourage. And I would give examples, repeated examples of how you or somebody else you know took that step when they were unsure. You know, Lisa talks about talking to Marge Album. That's a huge step. And, you know, Marge can seem to be very intimidating. She's very down to earth. But that's what I would encourage, is everybody's got to do it. This profession will not exist if we don't all step up to the plate and take some sort of a leadership role. And you can start small or you can start big. It just doesn't matter. And I think Katie's done a really great job of describing how people in athletic training are extremely supportive, and they love to teach other people how to do that. And that's what I would encourage. Just take the small first step, whatever it is. Be on a committee that seems to be very small, just work your way through. There's no other, you know, I wouldn't try to be the NATA president. That probably isn't going to work at your first leadership position, but small steps will take you down the path. Each one of those leadership positions will train you for the next leadership position. And what you don't know you'll be surrounded by people that want you to be successful.
Yes. And people will remember your name. And so when another position comes open, they'll say, have you thought about Lorin Cartwright? Have you thought about Andrea Kowalski, whoever it might be for that person? So your name gets out there. And I know that for a lot of women, there are self-esteem issues, there are family-related issues, and I know that those particular issues are out there, and we really are all in that together, and we really all do want to work on those issues together as much as they exist. And that was one of the issues when I tried to ask, and I asked some people to join. They said, well, I don't know, my family is young, I've got young kids, and I understand that, and perhaps I want to keep that name on a list because I want to come back to that person if they don't feel ready. But a lot of things you can do, and it doesn't require meeting. You might be able to be a part of a phone call or a Zoom meeting, and you might be a member of a committee that doesn't require a lot of work. So there are various levels of opportunity, and as soon as you step your little toe in the water, you might say, okay, I kind of like this. I think I could do more. So, you know, I think it's just really, really encouragement, because our profession, frankly, I think there are more women than men in our profession at this point.
Yes.
And so when we see District 4 and District 11, we really are going to have to step up, and we may not see that in our top leadership yet, but I really encourage people to really think about, gee, maybe I could do that, because nobody knows how to do this, right? We're all a bunch of athletic trainers who are volunteering for positions. And so when you talk about an imposter, Jenna, I can't tell you the number of times that I thought, I hope nobody finds me out, that I really don't know what I don't know. But I would imagine every single person on here has had that feeling, that people find you out, but in one sense, people are just glad that somebody stepped up. And so you find out that we're all in this, male, female, whatever it is, we're all in this together, and we're all just trying to figure it out. And support our profession, because no matter what, even though I'm retired, I know I certainly was an educator, but in my heart, when people ask me what I did, I was an athletic trainer. That's always who I will be. So.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. Does anyone else have any questions for anyone? Any Lisa, Lorin, or Katie?
I'm not sure I have a question, but I probably just a support here. So I'm at Indiana University. So Katie was a colleague of mine for a number of years. And I think what, Lorin, you said about being intentional about getting individuals involved and how to reach out and find those individuals that are ripe sort of for the picking. As a program director, I think having some information from different committees that they're looking for certain people. I think, whether we're at a post-professional or a professional level, there's those of us that are involved that would love to get that call to say, hey, we're looking for some young professionals. Do you know of any? And I, again, like the membership of the NATA, we have a large number of women in our programs. And I could easily say, oh my gosh, this is that person, this is the person that fits that. And not that I'm gonna force them to do anything or anything, but I do think that hearing that from maybe a program director or a clinical education coordinator to say, I think you can do this. And I think this would be a great way for you to get involved. And, they all think they're very busy with class and clinicals and stuff, which they are. But again, a lot of them are coming up to me, how do we get involved and what committee might we be able to sit on? And I'm not sure it's all that easy for them to actually seek out all those committee opportunities. But, if a committee such as yours or a program such as yours would sort of reach out to, a certain number of programs right now at the beginning, just a handful of people that you have good connections with, I'm pretty certain we can find some young professionals to do that. Sure. If not that year, right upon graduation, because I think we all have all of those students we all have a student in our program that is like, that person's climbing the ladder and that person's going to do something really important moving on. So, and I want to say the same thing. I mean, I hear that from Lisa, Lorin, and Katie is, as soon as you got asked to do something, it's like, what the heck, I can't do that. And I don't do that. And, it's like taking that step into the pool. If you're just going to dip your toe in it, you can do that initially. Sometimes you just have to jump in and just hope that somebody's there catching you and making sure you're not going underwater. But I will say that it's pretty infectious once you do that. Once you agree to do that. You learn a little bit about that committee, and then there's another committee possibly down the line and an interest, and you make connections and networking. I think some of the networking opportunities we have when we're actually in person have been very beneficial to the membership, and especially the women in athletic training. I can remember going to meetings years and years ago, and we've all built and carried each other on each other's shoulders all the way and saw it grow. And I think we can continue to do that.
Jackie, I think you bring up a really good point there, because when that committee started in 1995, and we were a very small group at that point in relationship, but there still was a lack of any awards or honors or serving on committees for women. And everybody didn't know where to start. But I will say, over the years, the women on that committee ended up going ahead and serving, I think, on other committees. So it was really kind of a jumping point. So as I'm listening to all this, I'm seeing and I'm hearing us as being kind of a liaison group of people that we can help to support and encourage to move on to maybe other committee leadership kinds of opportunities, if that makes sense. So for me, this is very helpful to hear this conversation as a means for people to take that first step. Okay, we'll join this particular group, and then maybe we'll go on to something else. So I can see that, and I appreciate your comments.
But I commend all of the women in athletic training that were part of these early committees for that, because work-life balance is one of the things that they tackled. And before, I can remember as a young professional, if you were ready to start a family or whatever else, most of them left the profession.
Right.
Because there was not an opportunity for them to have that work-life balance to be able to do both.
Right.
And I think, those of you that paved the way for women in athletic training really paved the way for work-life balance. And it's because of all of your efforts that, those of us that decided to do something a little different, perhaps it was a family or some other means,
right.
Have been able to do that. And to see young professionals have that opportunity to continue their careers regardless of their decisions as they move forward in their life. So thank you all for that.
I think also, as you're talking about that, Jackie, I'm thinking how times have changed and how for men, even that work-life balance, it's kind of giving people the okay to consider family, whether a wife, a husband, whatever it might be, relationship, to consider that as part of your job or what you're doing. So luckily, because times have changed, it's really across the board that I think people now are considering, this is my job, this is my profession, but I also have a family. Whereas early on it was, we'd go to awards banquets and all the people receiving awards were the professional football athletic trainers. They were great people, but they always thanked their wives for raising the family. And I remember looking up there and thinking, gee, and I'm not sure the wife ever had a name when they talked about it, but that was the way it was. And I think hopefully over the years that has changed. Maybe some of the, like Nick, maybe you can talk about that, but I think that's changed. So it's becoming, I think, more probably equal across the board, family kinds of things.
So I'm going to echo Jackie on a little bit of how hard it could be for young professionals to take that first step. So maybe that is something, a challenge maybe for the women in leadership group, because it took me 3 years to finally get on a committee. And the only reason I got put on the committee is because I ran against Jen Pop for the secretary position and like crashed and burned in that election pretty much. But it's like, it took me running for something big for them to notice me that I was interested. Because I mean, I applied to several committees, but it was really hard for a young professional to get on. And so I don't know, I think maybe figuring out a ways to advertise those open positions and like, what are people looking for? What are, like, I'll be honest, I don't even know what half the committee acronyms stand for. So when they advertise for them, I was like, I don't know what that is. I still don't know what COPA is, and I'm supposed to have a meeting with them next week. I was like, I don't know what this is, but okay, sure. So, or at least like I understand what the letters stand for, but I don't know what they do or what they, like that type of thing.
And that's kind of our weak point, right there, which is maybe there's an opening on this committee and an opening on that committee. And maybe that's not enough. We need more and different kinds of opportunities for people, that middle step before you can actually serve in that particular role.
Mhm.
And yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Well, I think you guys have provided a bunch of wonderful information today. Before we say our goodbyes, does anyone else have any other questions or comments, concerns, anything of the sort for any of our speakers today?
I have a question. Lisa and I and Katie are very happy to be here today. I will say that. We would love to do additional presentations to this group, and maybe you, Nicholas, are in charge of that, but asking people what they would like us to talk about, what leadership skills they're looking for and how to get them, or you know, we have Lisa has one, I believe, on, is it artificial intelligence, if I remember right?
Emotional intelligence.
I'm sorry, emotional intelligence. And I can do safe space training.
I'd like to do mental health.
Mental health. So
We got a June, a July, and an August set.
We do. We have a lot coming up.
Yeah, there's it's almost like the ocean of possibilities.
Yeah.
You know, I would,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
It's
Go,
out
Tom. Sorry.
Yeah, it's out there. We put the gauntlet before you, it looks like, Nicholas and Tom, to let us know how we can be helpful to you moving forward. And the other thing I'd like to know is what kind of a tie is that you have where there's a red little part there?
So it's a tie I got off Amazon. The tail is red and then the front part's black. So
the red part got the behind scenes area there. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I had a graduation today and I had to hurry back from campus to get all set.
Congratulations.
So thank you.
Did you graduate?
Congrats.
What was that?
You graduated today?
Yep. Yeah, at about 3 p.m. So.
Hey,
Oh, jeez.
what's your next step?
I have an internship that I've accepted with Michigan State University working with cross-country track and field. So I'll be heading there end of July, beginning of August.
Great.
Say hi to Sally for us.
Oh, I will.
How about that? A woman in leadership.
Yeah.
Division
Oh, yeah.
Football.
Division I football, right.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yep. And it's not too far away. It's just, I think East Lansing is like an hour away from Grand Rapids, Allendale. So
Yep.
we can stay kind of close to Grand Valley, which is kind of nice.
That's good. That's great. Good stuff.
Yeah, say hi to Jen Wilkinson too, Nicholas.
Okay.
She is a IU alumnus and one of our former staff people. So hello to her also.
All right,
I
I will.
didn't know she was there. Okay.
So did you see this, Nick? They just gave you, they just tripled your networking potential.
Yeah, well,
It is.
won't
Just
take
by
long.
hosting one series.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Next step, next committee. Yep.
Right. So,
Well, Women in Leadership, thank you very much for spending time with us this Saturday, May 1st. We've been going for about 58 minutes or so, so I really appreciate the time. Thank you for sharing your passion. That's so evident throughout this lecture today, this talk, the experience, the knowledge, and hopefully we can get this in the right spot so that the students in these early career ATs can see this. They can get interested, they can be engaged, and then they can take that step into the pool or they can cannonball in. So thank you very much for your time, everybody, and thank you attendees for coming.
And Thomas, from my standpoint, if you want to put my contact information up there, feel free to do that if anybody has any questions.
yeah, I'm open to that too. Anybody wants to ask questions? I'm happy to be Marge Album Junior or whatever you want.
I do plan on sending an email out to all the people that signed up for today's lecture, whether they participated in it or not, with all of your contact information, if that's okay with all three of you.
Perfect.
And then also, Katie, would you mind sending me the information for the meeting that you're going to be hosting in, you said 2 weeks, correct?
Yep. Well, I have to send it out to my members first, but yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
After you do that, would you mind sending me that so I can send it out to everyone as well to help advertise a little bit more for you?
Okay. Well, that meeting is really just for the people presently within our group, because we're trying to figure out where we're going to go, what we're going to do. But as soon as we come to conclusions, we'll be getting a hold of you.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. Well, like
Thank you,
Thomas said,
ladies.
thank you everyone for attending.
Thank
Hope
you.
everyone has a wonderful Sunday.
Thank you.
Tomorrow.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.